Good evening. How are you? I'm doing a stand-in talk because I left the office too late and it's entirely dark out. And the thing that upsets me is several things that have happened today that speak poorly about our nation's handling of the law and the Constitution. There was an investigator I worked with. He was an original. His name was Carl Bogan. He had done an undercover stint routing out corruption. And by the time I had finished law school, I decided I wanted to go into politics, but I wanted to be a prosecutor to learn how to argue and to find out if I could make a difference when it came to corruption. So Carl Bogan was the model for a TV show with Telly Savalas. And Kojak was the name of the show. And Telly Savalas, who was a successful actor, was with Carl Bogan one day. And he asked Carl Bogan, "Would you like to do what I'm doing?" And Carl said no, he was not. He said that he had the greatest job in the world. He went after the most dangerous creature on earth, the two-legged creature. He was talking about corruption. He was talking about violence. He was talking about fraud. He was talking about all the things that usually motivate prosecutors and investigators to do their job. And that's the way I looked at it. So it is alien to me, if there's misconduct by a high official, that you don't dig in and go after that official. I was part of a team that chased after a congressman in Pennsylvania. And he's a mustachioed congressman, had a long cape all the time, and he spoke in Shakespearean accents. His name was Flood, Dan Flood of Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. And he traded on favors and so forth. And we worked hard on that case. So if somebody were to knock on my door and say, "What do you think about what Trump is doing? And I'd like to give you a job as a special assistant," I would be eager to do that. And every prosecutor, at least I knew from my age when I was a prosecutor, and most since over the years, want to get at the bad guys, to do the thing that is necessary to protect society, to preserve the rule of law, to acknowledge and use as is appropriate the Constitution, and to do it fully and fairly, due process, fundamental fairness that's what that means. And so I have been mystified how Maine Justice could fail to go after Trump, who tried to overturn the election of Biden, which was right and just and fair, and replace him as its winner, although he lost the election. We've since found other things out about him. And there are prosecutors who have seriously considered his misconduct. But the Justice Department dragged its feet for several years under Sleepy Garland, who is just inert material and nothing like what I think a prosecutor is, or a person who should be an overseer in the Department of Justice. I do admit I have as my model Bobby Kennedy, and particularly his Get Hoffa squad and chasing after organized crime, which some think may be a factor in his brother's assassination, even his own. That's the kind of courage that it takes to be a prosecutor, a person that resists and is prepared to take on the fight in the face of potential violence and threats by the people that you're investigating. In other words, mob cases are like that. And I knew a prosecutor that they shot out down in Texas, and he fell to the floor of his car and they didn't get him, but they did kill the judge in that case. So it's not usually thought of as a dangerous thing. You think a prosecutor is more likely to get a paper cut than to be at risk. And so today I find out that the so-called special counsel Smith is quitting. Now you may ask, what do I think he should do? Well, what I think he should do is he should play through, meaning without knowing what may happen, to do the right thing step by step by step. What is the right thing? The right thing is to prosecute the crime that you believe occurred, that you have the evidence of, and that you got indictments for, and that you've been preparing for, and that you submitted legal briefs why you should go forward. That's what you should do. You don't quit. Prosecutors don't quit. Patriots don't quit. People who believe in the law fight to sustain it. So I think of him more as a not so special counsel, given how he's handled this. And you might say that's kind of unfair. Well, no, I don't think it is unfair. There have been threats. There have been people saying they're going to punish him. Is that why he left? Did he leave because Garland said to him, no, I think you really should go. You should get out of here, get out of Dodge before they come and get you or me or start investigations of us. We can't have that. Maybe you should go back to Europe. Anyhow, it'll be interesting to see in the days ahead how he does handle his exit strategy. Now, I was of an age in which I could appreciate what Watergate was about. And some of us, this is in the days when the electronics weren't up to what they are today, you'd walk by a place with a window that had a TV inside, and you'd watch the hearings that they had. Well, when special prosecutors were put together and Archibald Cox was appointed to investigate Watergate, really, President Nixon got upset about the documents he was seeking and ordered him to stop doing that. And Archibald Cox wouldn't do that, and as a result, the president fired him. It fired him, Elliot Richardson, Ruckelshaus, and finally, a lawyer named Bork, B-O-R-K. He did what the president wanted. And soon after that, he was nominated to be an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. Now, that didn't happen for a lot of reasons. He had extreme positions, and he had done what I just said, which was a shame and a disgrace for any lawyer to have done that, to not obey the law and to walk away from a responsibility, a duty, an obligation to fulfill. And I ran into him years later, and I didn't say anything critical to him. And he felt he had to raise it, which maybe he was picking up vibrations from me, but I didn't say anything. And I don't think I was so visible that he knew who I was in any kind of ideological way. And Holly, my wife, was present. And he was very sympathetic. And he regretted the fact that he hadn't been appointed to he hadn't been consented on the president's nomination to join the court. And this still bothered him. Now, I think that was justice, but I couldn't help but watch him as an older man so focused on this thing he didn't get. It brings with it a kind of madness. And so that was the Watergate thing. So Jack Smith's no Archibald Cox. Certainly Garland isn't, and I don't know who in the Justice Department today, the Just Us Department, is that way. We also had Bob Mueller. You may remember that he had great promise for us, but he turned out to be a frail stage mimicry of the prosecutor we believed that he was. So, our Department of Justice is going to walk away from a prosecution of a man who tried to overthrow the government, who's been convicted elsewhere. So, good riddance, Jack. You probably never should have taken the job if you weren't prepared to do it. Now, on the same day that I read this story in the afternoon or evening, I don't know when the development occurred, we find out that no less than Mr. Getz, who was under investigation by the Justice Department for all sorts of sexual offenses, minors across state lines and so forth, some question about the reliability of witnesses, and there's an ongoing investigation, as I understand, is still on the Hill. So the president, in a kind of kindness to actual or potential felons, has offered him the position of the Attorney General of the United States. Isn't that something? You know, I've gotten to the point where you wouldn't trust these guys to park your car. But in terms of ethics, you can't trust it at all. And at the same time that we're talking about making him the Attorney General, uh, we're going to attack the Justice Department for corruption by this guy. What does he know about it? Well, anyhow, he's resigned from the Congress, which ends the inquiry on the Hill into any possible misconduct he may have, and he'll start work as soon as he can. And we know that he's going to go into the place, and he's going to look for, well, scapegoats to explain and to continue to enforce by hook and crook, by disinformation and slanders, that somehow or other the Justice Department was making phony cases looking into Trump and others. And we stand on the brink of having a president seek pardons. Now, let me stop there for a second. Who do you think would be a really good person to get rid of the cases pending against Trump? And if that person were the Attorney General, who would that Attorney General be? It'd be Gaetz. That's what this is. This guy does contracts. Everything about the Republican rule is contract. Quid pro quo. What you want, what you need, what you get, what I get. So there's my ask and there's the get. And he has been with Trump in person, meaning that there's probably no emails, there's probably no phone calls, et cetera, et cetera. You get the idea. Now, the other things that may come from that, recommendations of pardon and who may do it and how they may do it and how they may cancel state prosecutions and so forth, all of that will be part of this ball of wax. And they just hope that somehow or other we're going to sit on our hands and say, yeah, that's the way it is. Well, in a corrupt administration, that is the way it is. And I can't help but worry if there are not patriots in America, not people who honor the law, who respect the Constitution, who think it's important, if those people don't exist, this country will be like one of those dystopic movies with sand blowing across the close place where you are, broken cars out there, buildings destroyed. And I'm saying this symbolically. I'm not saying that you'll see it. But with the panorama of critical issues that we have, what seems impossible today may be possible, maybe even likely, given the combination of the spoil system that they're engaged in and their incompetence to do the jobs they're appointing each other to do. When you're asking Congress on top of this not to conduct any hearings to screen these nominees to be in Trump's cabinet, and you're talking about Gaetz, you're saying that nobody should ask this fellow questions under oath to determine whether or not he's suitable to be the Attorney General? And we could go down the list. But for this evening, I'd like to talk about how Smith should slip out of town quietly and anonymously if he's not prepared to finish the job that he was appointed to do. And I don't care who gives him what cover tomorrow. That is really how I feel. I don't think anybody should feel any different, especially after this election and what the consequences of it are for the leaders that we have not standing up to this worthless piece of you know the rest. So that's what I had on my mind. And now that I've gotten it out and pestered you with it, when everybody tomorrow is trying to normalize this stuff, you can say to yourself, that's bullshit. That is not true. We have had American heroes in similar situations and they've done the right thing. And the next time somebody says, we went to the moon, we can do anything. Well, why don't you invite them to go to the moon? Or maybe one of those places with one of those rocket ships that Musk would send us on to Mars, you know. So good evening, and I hope to be out doing a walk and talk tomorrow. So maybe we'll catch up. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.